la music cubana para familia americanos que vienen a La Habana Vieja.
I've had an interest for a number of years, primarily because my hometown, Brunswick, had established the first formal sister-city relationship with Trinidad, and from that moment on, we've all thought about going to Cuba. So it seemed to be a number of things coming together.
Well, I think Cuba is a really unique island, really frozen in time, and really the specific era of when the revolution happened. Everything is sort of frozen and encapsulated in that.
It's kind of like the Galapagos effect. What happens when you take something and divide it at a certain point and then isolate that and see how it evolves independently somewhere else?
I've traveled to Central America before, but this is just this little bubble in time.
Honestly, it was the idea of travel. I had never been out of the country before. I have only a few times been out of New England.
I think that to view our culture, we have to see it from an outside lens. That was one of the biggest reasons I wanted to come into this.
It's sort of like a forbidden city. You know, it's one of those places that all my life was sort of off limits.
Well, Cuba has been known as like a kind of time warp for culture, a place that's been sort of stuck or trapped pre-1960. So I wanted to get there before the Starbucks, the Kentucky Fried Chicken, the McDonald's, the Burger Kings all kind of spoil that natural landscape.
Americans that used to go to Cuba, they used to go to the casinos, they used to go gambling, they used to go for prostitution. What a different and incredible thing is to go to Cuba for education.
And I ran into an architect who was like, "Hey, where are you from?" I'm like, "Oh, we're from America." And he was like, "Have you eaten yet? Do you want to come up into my wife is cooking?" And I'm like, "I met this man 5 minutes ago and he's inviting me into his house."
Everyone was so willing to talk and just share their stories, and I think that's so powerful. A tool of learning and just something you should strive to do in life.
Corporation, and that corporation is today in charge for the restoration and the preservation of old Havana. That corporation makes its own money running hotels, bars, cafeterias, retail shops, this place. That's the way they make money. When you spend money in old Havana, you're just funding the restoration and the preservation.
It seems to me that the whole world has got to pitch in to try to...
The question is this. That model is only valid for old Havana.
Yeah.
People like me and others also, we defend the idea that it should be cloned to other areas in the cities. The challenge now is this. Look at the future and say, okay, what kind of city will Havana be?
What I was surprised about Havana in general was the fact that their outdoor spaces had architecture and the outdoors was such a part of their lives.
As soon as we got to the Plaza de Armas there in Havana, I noticed the granite pavers, and I thought I recognized them as main pavers and started chasing down answers on that, whether they could be main pavers and whether that symbolized a connection between Maine and Cuba.
I think the School of Superior Art, of course, was kind of a highlight, and I think it ultimately stands for the importance that the Cubans, I think, as a country hold for art.
That feeling of place and the feeling of land, when that appears in paintings, it was really kind of captured me.
As part of my research, I thought we'd do a little experiment. I'd like you to sit back, close your eyes, and let's reappear under a full moon in Havana.
It all tied in really well together, so while we were there we all knew exactly what we were looking for our research.
Probably what most enthralled me was the Plaza de Armas. There's a wealth of very interesting, historically significant buildings there.
This concept of integrated course is a phenomenal way to learn. We had a lot of background built from 3 pillars: the digital art, the art and architecture of Cuba, and Latin American literature.
Everything that we studied in the courses culminated in this really rich experience while we were there.
Even if the integration doesn't actually take place in class, you're sort of bouncing off each other. I think the travel is a key part to it. I think that I've often felt that the subject of Cuba is big enough so it's going to bring everybody along in some manner.
I think it was a really unique opportunity to have Inverna Lopez, a celebrated graphic novelist, brought in and be able to have her speak to us and get to know her, but then also for my research, being able to interview her and have that time and opportunity with her and get her perspective was a huge benefit to my research.
I was very impressed by all the different aspects of your project. The diversity was very good.
The final project is about mental health services in Cuba and how they integrate healing through art into that.
I think immersion is the best way to learn.
Because when we can integrate a course that connects with someone's personal life, it has more meaning. So something that's intellectual and cultural and emotional and has community, like all those pieces make a course integral, and then adding the courses together I think makes a larger whole.
I started to see how everything was connecting and working together, especially with the literature and the art. And then at the end, after we went to Cuba and took pictures and I wrote my journal a lot, we had to make a book. And this is what my book ended up being.
I was really interested in the literature of Cuba, and I knew that for my final project I wanted to do a short story. An important part of what literature is finding those moments of real life and then being able to help other people connect with them.
So I think really trying to give people an understanding of Cuban culture through literature, which for me, I think is a really rich way to understand people's lives in addition to like historical dates and numbers to see how life events affect peoples and communities.
Trading work with a local artist. I brought some of my prints and he was in Trinidad in a little gallery and he traded one of his prints for one of my prints. And as an artist, that was really special.
Just seeing something that's so different from our culture really made me sort of see the United States with a new set of eyes.
I found a very complex culture that was very welcoming, warm, inviting. The people were beautiful.
I can honestly say that I view life here in the United States a little bit differently.
It's such a shock to go away and then come back to it. So I don't know, that was good for me. It's always good to be shocked like that.
It just had to be experienced, and there's no other way, and I would do it again.
There was such an amazing community that was built in this program.
And down there, it's more about connecting human spiritually. It's not about who has the most material or the most items, it's about who's in your family, and that's all that really matters.
A remarkable phenomena that I observed was this idea of just being connected, like hanging around, not only just telling stories, but playing games and just being together in space without technology.
I was talking to Dylan. We were getting ready to leave, and I was going to go sit in one area, and he was going to go to another. And I was like, "Oh, your friends are over there." He's like, "They're your friends too."
And I think we learned not only about the Cubans, but by ourselves probably a little bit.
Before going down there, you really only have more of a romanticized view of how it is and just sort of like more of making blind assumptions about society. But actually going down there and seeing what it's really like, it really had a really profound impact on me.
I just am a changed person forever.